It is October, and we've jumped feet first into a series entitled Know Your Stuff. And Sunday, I preached a message entitled Someone Has to Pay for That. And the long and short of the message was Christ died on the cross as an atoning sacrifice for sin. And all who believe in him find forgiveness through him. And all who do not believe in him will have to atone for their own sin in hell forever. Of course, our privilege and duty is to declare that good news to every creature far and wide. So there's many directions that Russ could go from that message, but I'm going to turn you loose.
For sure.
Help us to dig a little deeper.
Well, I have to say that as far as Calvinism goes, I've always been on board with Calvinism. I believe it's biblical. And the one I'd always struggled with was limited atonement. But when you really think about it deep and examine each word and what each word means, you got to conclude some things. Once God atones for something, atonement is made. That atonement doesn't fail. Therefore, if an atonement is completed for all, as in all people with no filtering, no subgrouping, just all meaning all, it would save all with no conditions. So you got to conclude that while the blood was sufficient for all, as in all, the grace of salvation was designed to be applied by faith. Therefore, if faith isn't there, the blood is rejected and not applied, and no atonement is made. Therefore, limited atonement is biblical. I believe it's biblical. This is where it's things like this where the haters can dive in.
Yeah.
If one takes limited atonement and runs with it in isolation, you're going to start to see conclusions, or maybe the right word might be accusations like these, some examples. God shows favoritism. God shows partiality. Christians are smug elitists. And words get put into our mouths such as, look what God did for me and not you, for example. It's just another way for the ungodly to badmouth Christ. I mean, let's face it. When people want to hate on something, they'll take a fact and they'll run with that fact, whether or not something else needs to be brought alongside it to make it into the truth. Can't take biblical truths in isolation. We know this. They've got to be considered in context along with the whole Bible. And I think in the case of limited atonement, we've really got to consider it in the context of God's heart, what God's heart is. And we can see this in a couple of places. In Isaiah 65, 1-3, Isaiah prophesies. He says, I was sought by those who did not ask for me. I was found by those who did not seek me. I said, here I am, to a nation who was not called by my name. He says, I have, meaning God, stretched out my hands all day long to a rebellious people who walk in a way that is not good according to their own thoughts. A people who provoke me to anger continually to my face, who sacrifice in gardens, burn incense on altars of brick, etc. Paul clarifies this particular prophecy in Romans 10. Isaiah is prophesying about the Gentiles finding God as a result of Israel's obedience. But God's heart is shown clearly in verse 2, even for those that reject him, and he's stretching out his hands to Israel. And again, we see something similar in Matthew 23, verses 37-39, one of Jesus' laments. It says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you weren't willing. So your house is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more, till you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the Messiah. Again, God's heart here is clear. He wants disobedient Jews to come to him, but they've got to accept the Messiah to do so. And there's so many other verses that show God's heart. I mean, 1 Timothy 2:4, 2 Peter 3:9, Romans 2:4, Isaiah 55:7, Ezekiel 18:23. That's just 5 examples. Ungodly people love to take partial truths so that they can make truthless points that are seemingly unopposed. But it's our duty as Christians to provide the whole truth, to fill in the gaps that others leave either deliberately or just don't want to see or just don't see. Sometimes people just don't see them. You got to prepare yourself to be hated for it by the stubborn. But you've also, because that can make you back away. You don't want to be hated for it. You don't want to cause dissent. You don't want to cause arguments. But you got to consider those who will hear the truth also. And they might not be the ones who are sharing the hatred. They may just be the bystanders that are watching. They're the ones that need to hear the whole truth. You someone who's literally just wants to hate on God is going to take in a truth like this, a partial truth to attack Christians. And you're likely not going to convince them. It's worth trying, but don't just look at it as trying to get to them. You got to think of the people who are listening, who need to hear the truth and not be pulled away by Satan's lies. So for our grace group verses, I thought we'd take a look at Romans chapter 11, verses 28 to 32. This is where Paul's talking about the mystery of Israel's salvation and how their disobedience has blessed us Gentiles. And there's 5 questions to answer as always. How would you explain these verses in your own words? What do they tell us about God? What do they tell us about people? How can you apply these to your life? And who are you going to tell about it?
Amen. Thank you, Russ. It is amazing. Anytime you begin to study something like this, at least for me, I find lots of answers, but also uncover more questions, and many times questions that I realize I'm never going to get that answer in this life because God's ways are far above us. He transcends us,
Yep.
and nobody has ever mastered uh, all of the why and how He does what He does. But thank you for your thoughts.